Welcome to episode 7 of Straight to It. I'm here with my brother Jason, and you know me as Clem Boogie. Tonight we have a very heartfelt episode as we're going to touch upon Tyre Nichols and the disgraceful events that took place just some couple days ago. I believe it was sometime during the week, and the video had surfaced, obviously from the officer's body cam, and we are going to give our genuine perspectives, what we've experienced as Black men on our end, and how we foresee things either potentially changing or maintaining the same. So let me start off by saying this. Everyone, we are from the inner city, as I'm speaking of from me and Jason. Jason is from the Lower East Side. I'm from the Bronx. These are two rough cities in one of the biggest metropolitans in the United States, New York City. We've seen it. We've lived through a variety of eras. We've lived through the crack era, the gang era, you name it. We've lived through that. But what is becoming a growing downfall is the worth of a Black man. And I say that to say this. Every week or so, and I hate to say it now, it's becoming every couple of days, you hear of a Black man getting gunned down. You hear of some kind of assault. Obviously, Black men go in tons and bundles. They're going to jail, getting hauled off and going to jail, going to prison. You hear it. We're plastered all over the news for all the wrong reasons. But what is there to blame about it? I have no idea. There could be a variety of answers that can go with that. But, for the sake of not, taking all of the air out of the room, I'm going to turn it over to Jason and he's going to shed some light. Jay, have at it.
Yeah. So earlier this month, January 7th, for those that aren't really fully in tune with the situation that happened, this was supposedly a traffic stop, and the officers state that that Mr. Nichols was not driving according to the law. I need to say that because during the department's investigation, they found the officer's statement unwarranted. Nothing on their camera shows that Mr. Nichols violated any traffic laws. I just need that to be clear because for those, and I know it's not our type of audience, but for those that may come across this and think, well, he shouldn't have broke the law with that type of ignorance, I just want to dispel that immediately. Even though that's a stupid comment, I want to dispel that immediately and make it known that their own investigation found that he did not break the law. Right. So these officers were on a power trip. That's the only type of evidence so far that has been brought forward. And they stopped this young man. And this man is terrified. And he's a few homes away from his house. He's almost home. So he makes a dash for it, for safety. He's terrified. And what do these 5 officers do? Well, we do know now that there were 6, but 5 are being charged. They beat him in such a inhumane manner that the cause of death, one, they're not even going to put an official cause of death because they don't want to put against, and I need this to be clear, and anybody out there in the legal world knows this to be true. They don't want to put the cause of death to be homicide, because then it changes the officer's charges from second-degree murder or manslaughter to first-degree murder, and they don't want to do that because even though they fired and they got rid of these officers and they're being charged, they will not charge them the way they would charge us. That's still not going to happen. So they haven't put an official cause of death, but they did let the family know that there was extensive beatings. Of course we've seen it, but there was internal bleeding that was extensive. So for this to happen, we saw what we saw, right? And we saw it from different different angles because there's different body cams and there's
Right.
poles, and so we got to see different angles that were being displayed. You have to also take into account this young 29-year-old man was very slim,
Mm-hmm.
and every of the five officers were not.
Right.
And they used batons and they kicked with
Mm-hmm.
those real steel toe heavy boots, and
Mm-hmm.
they cocked back and flushed haymakers, not jabs, haymakers.
Right.
When you hit someone with a haymaker, you mean harm.
Right.
That's not self-defense. A haymaker takes time to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Self-defense comes up very quickly.
Right.
A haymaker, when someone's being held by two other men,
Yeah.
that's intentional.
Yeah.
You mean the most harm you can deliver with your fists, with your shoulder, with
Mm-hmm.
every power that comes from your shoulder that becomes dispelled and put into your fist. You mean that. That's
Right.
intentional. And anything that comes with that was intentional. And I think that we forget that because we always try to give the benefit of the doubt to the officers and, oh, he was running and he felt disrespected or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Every hit that day was intentional. It
There you
was
go.
so horrific because there was nothing self-defense. Even when this man was pinned down, even when he was handcuffed, even when he was held, each of those stages, he was being brutalized.
Yeah.
I saw nothing self-defense. I saw no punches thrown that someone said, if I didn't throw this punch, I would be hurt. There
Mm-hmm.
was nothing.
Right.
We saw one of the most horrific acts, uh, you know, probably, I mean, from the police.
Mm-hmm.
Because, of course, we saw other videos where people have died, but it wasn't as brutal, or it didn't feel as brutal watching it.
Right.
Last time I can remember it being, and I don't know how this individual survived because it was crazy, was Rodney King. I
Yeah.
remember watching that video and thinking I would have never survived
Yeah.
all those hits with the nightsticks.
Mm-hmm.
But Rodney King was a big guy, but I would have never survived. I remember thinking that when I was a little kid,
Mm-hmm.
thinking there's no way I would have survived. They would have killed me.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened with this slim individual. They did the same thing and they killed him.
Yeah.
And it's just, this is where we're at as a society. And then it becomes, and that's why I love that this is our topic, because for us, it's not about sides,
Yeah.
right? It's about humanity. And I hate that in all these other platforms, it becomes politicized in a way that, like, you have extreme right people saying, oh, well, if he would have did this, always victim blaming. And then you have
Right.
extreme left, sometimes they mean well, but they don't move well, right? And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
we're the ones still being hurt. We hear you on both sides of these political spectrums, but you're
Right.
never giving us the right answers. You're never doing the right thing to prevent this. This is systematic. I hear people on the right, oh, but they were black this time.
Mm-hmm.
But see, the problem I have with that is that it doesn't matter the color of the officer. The system believes we are who we are when we're not in that group,
Right.
right? So those five officers didn't see a peer.
Mm-hmm.
They saw a less than. That's what they
Right.
saw, because you don't beat your peer like that.
Yeah. You're 100%
That
right.
that's slave mentality. Slave owners didn't beat slave owners like that.
Mm-hmm.
Slave owners beat their less than, what they perceive to be less than. That's
Mm-hmm.
who they beat that way. And that's what we saw. We saw five grown people who believed that he was less than and he was deserving of this. You don't do this to someone and say, I mean, you don't beat someone and be like, well, I know he didn't deserve it, but let me throw another haymaker. I know
Right.
he don't deserve it, but let me pull out this baton. Like, you really fully believe that you have the right to impose this harm on someone else. And that's systematic. That's
Right.
more than just white cop, black cop. I mean, KRS-One made it very clear decades
Mm-hmm.
ago that
Yep.
sometimes black cops are worse.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, UA said it, KRS-One said it.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad because, one, you have to be systematically programmed in the most perverse way to truly believe in that system when you live the life outside that system. And that's
Right.
even scarier because, one, you're trying to show your worth to the system, that you would go the extra step and go this far, and there's a lot wrong, and you know all the answers that are needed and required are the ones that won't be done.
Right.
We need a complete
Um,
systematic redo. It's not going to
yeah.
happen.
Yeah,
So
I
we need,
agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you with each point. You've hit every point that we are going to cover this evening. Um, I think the biggest for me is just like the question says, like we're both black men. Obviously, we have a third member of our group that's also a black man. We have family members. We're black. Period. It's getting harder and harder to walk out the door and understand like you're taking a chance walking out the door. And I tell people all the time, and like they laugh, but in hindsight, I'm actually being serious. Like, I'm not going to go anywhere unless like I have weeks advance notice, because going out at night does not afford you or even promise that you're coming back home. And I think
right.
this is becoming a harsh, even harsher reality each day and each step. We see all the news wires, we see all the publications and things of that nature that people are talking about. It's hard. We're both big people. Like if people were to meet us, we're both big men. That he was a kid. I'm not saying
Yeah.
kid to minimize him, like, like, oh, he was weak. He was that. No, he was a man. Yes, 29 years old. But in stature, he didn't have a chance. He had no chance whatsoever. I think they had listed him at 5'11, 143 pounds. So he was piped in skinny. Let's just say that. Um, Going into that situation, whether it's a routine traffic stop or whatever the case may be, the biggest elephant in the room is he's a black man. He sees the sirens and things of that nature. He already knows what it is. His heart is racing. There's, all kinds of anxiety going on. He's watched, the George Floyd thing. He's watched everything. It's all implanted in all of our brains. And whether you're
Yeah.
black or brown, it's already implanted in you. You know what it is. It can never end well, but you brace yourself. You know what I mean? You always embrace yourself for the worst kind of scenario. Unfortunately, it cost this young man his life. I think, people have that moniker, and like you joke about it. It's one of the biggest puns. Like those who are cops now and abuse the power were the punks in high school. And, I'm not saying it to be funny, because obviously it has to be something. I think you touched on it, where there's like that switch where, I don't know, they're just drunk with power, because now, you can walk around with a gun, a baton, pepper spray, zip ties, whatever. And they know you yourself as the individual have nothing. And they look at you as such, as nothing. So when they pull up on you, or they pull you aside on the road, or even like us, I'm sure you've done the same, where you've gone out and it's 2, 3 a.m. and a plainclothes officer asks you have ID on you. We already know what they are. They're DTs. They sit at the corner. They're just plain dressed. They dress like us, but they have their own intentions. What those intentions are, we'll never know, but they do. So getting caught up in that. And like I said, us growing up in New York City, you see it. We've seen everything, every corner and everything. When they say if you can survive in New York City, you can survive anywhere, it's actually relatively true.
Yeah.
Because a lot of places, they don't move like us. There are a lot of people who come to the city, have their heads all in the sky, not paying attention. That's how you get robbed in New York City, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to give you a warning factor. That's just how it goes. You have to pay attention to your surroundings. In this guy's case, he's originally from California. How he got to Memphis is, I think he was following his girlfriend then at the time, or whatever the case may be. They have also, I believe they had a baby, a kid or something like that. And he, probably just starting life over, trying to just get acclimated into Memphis, Tennessee area, whatever the case may be. I've listened to the audio. I'm sure you have, and I'm sure plenty of people listen to it. He wasn't from there. And my thing with that is, when you're not from somewhere, people always give you a side eye. And that side eye is not to be like, oh, you look different. No, he looked just like them. But they can tell from the way he was talking and the way he was moving, he's not from there. And when you're not from certain areas, and I don't know why people are that way, they become very territorial. They're not asking you questions, they're trying to make a move. And that's not a move that you want to be a part of. Uh, he, he's not a ghetto kid because I think a lot of people have this mentality that he was talking tough or doing this or doing that. No, he wasn't. He was a soft spoken person. While he was getting beaten up and assaulted and all these kind of things, he was calling for his mother. So let's, as you said, Jason, earlier, dispel the nonsense because I know people love to say, why didn't he comply? Was he getting mouthy with the officers? Blah, blah, blah. No, he wasn't. I think at best he had told them, you guys are doing too much, or like something to the effect of, dude, what is this all about? So, he wasn't from the area. Another thing is that what do we do now? Because, the officers were black. Had these been 5 white officers, outrage out of the wazoo. So now, for all, and I don't knock it, I just know it's not for me. All the people who claim protesting, marching, and that, what are you going to march to? Because when the accountability is there, we don't hold each other accountable. And I'm talking about us, the community, the culture. We do not hold each other accountable because when you see someone that looks like you doing the gang violence and all the nonsense that they're doing, terrorizing your neighborhood, you choose to turn a blind eye. No, I didn't see anything. Oh, I wasn't involved unless you're directly affected by it. So when does it stop? Because I tell you what, for all these young kids that want to join these gangs or think they're doing something or pumping fear into someone, you're really not doing anything because when you see that white officer come around and they're ready to chase you, or you see them boys, them DTs that come knocking in the PJs to come drag you stupid asses out, you're not tough. You're not ready to, you're not coming out guns blazing or anything. You're quiet as a church mouse. You know why? Because you know what they're going to do to you. But if you see me or you see Jason or you see anybody that looks remotely like you feel compelled, entitled to push that narrative that you're tough. I don't care that you're tough. I don't want to move. I don't want to feel that I have to prove how tough I am to anybody. That's not my job. But what I do want people to understand is the respect that you put out there, the interpretation that you put out there, that's what they're going to judge you by. And I say that to say this because me and Jason are both black men. Yes, we have tattoos. We are bigger men. We probably are 2 times the size of Tyre Nichols. So put that in perspective. So how do you think that would have went? Us getting beaten up? Yes, we would have gotten bruises and stuff like that. Maybe, I don't know. Yes, probably it would have cost us our life, but that wasn't warranted. You're talking about somebody 143 pounds. I can't stress that enough because I'm not trying to be funny. There are women that are bigger than him.
Yeah.
Okay. So that should give some insight as to what that young man had to endure and ultimately his demise. But as it pertains to our culture, we have to change. I don't care what everybody thinks is cool or in vogue or whatever. It has to change. Um, so, Jay, what in your eyes do you feel when I say, why do you think the lines seem blurred? How do you receive that question? How does that like strike with you?
So I have this tendency of going deep rooted with things,
Hmm.
and I believe that the reason why we see ourselves a certain way and we're perceived a certain way
Right.
by society is because of how we've been depicted for so long on television. So I
Right.
always look at things like, so for those that may not be aware, all my degrees in school are people based. I have
Right.
degrees in psychology, women's studies, and public health, all the way
Mhm.
through my doctorate of public health.
Right.
Um, and one thing I've learned in these studies is that everything they tell us about us is not real. And
Yeah.
so like we have this stamp that we're like the biggest single dad, single mother people in the planet, and that's not true.
Right.
There are more present men of color than anybody else. But that's not the narrative that you'll ever find on any meme, YouTube video, or or NBC or Fox, right? They
Yeah.
always emphasize anything that gives us a shady light,
Hmm.
right? Even if you look at two murders, one committed by a white male, one committed by a black male, the black male's photo will always illustrate the most his worst time of life, while the white guy, and this has been proven, can be a rapist,
Hmm.
and they'll show his his surfing photo,
Right.
or some photo where he's like petting a horse, right? and, and
Hmm.
and that's the problem. So this is where lines get blurred as far as how we're viewed by the world, is because we've been depicted a certain way intentionally by the media for so many my entire life. So I
Hmm.
could imagine it goes even before my life. So for
Right.
so many decades we've been force fed the narrative that this is who we are. The black home only is one way.
Hmm.
We don't have the same love that everybody else has in their homes. And the white home is full of love, and we all know this not to really be true, but in our subconscious mind we embrace that because it's an automatic trigger to what we've been shown our whole lives, right?
Right.
And
Hmm.
it's rare shows like Good Times that
Yep.
fought against that, right? It showed real love. It showed a firm father, but he was a loving father. It showed, real problems in real neighborhoods, but that was a rarity. And
Right.
the demographic that it catered to was us, and we already knew that existed. But
Hmm.
then you got the rest of the world where they see these other shows, and we was always, our value has always been less, right? Even in horror movies. I mean, we
Hmm.
joke about it because it's an ongoing pun, but there's a subconscious there where the first person to die is always the black guy,
The
right?
black person. Yeah.
But that shows that there's a subconscious telling of value there, right? Our
Right.
value isn't there for us to remain in those type of movies because they don't see us as heroes. They don't
Hmm.
see us as those that overcome, or they don't
Hmm.
want us to believe that about ourselves. So lines get blurred because of all an entire life that we've lived of subconsciously, absorbing someone else who ain't us tell us
Right.
who we are. So
Hmm.
what happens? It goes exactly to what you was just saying. You have a young gang banging male who wants to be tough, right? And he doesn't fear his own
Right.
because he's taught not to. He's taught
Hmm.
that our value is not of the highest. So he
Yeah.
doesn't have to treat us that way. But he'll call the white officer sir if it'll get him out of that jam. Or when the white guy in the suit is walking by, I mean, he's not going to Wall Street to terrorize anybody
No.
because he believes the demographic there warrants a certain type of respect. And this is all force fed. So lines don't get blurred in the. I mean, of course, the home plays a part, but where lines really get blurred about how we see each other, how we're viewed, how systems are created to treat us a certain way, that's fed through television, through media, and it continues that way. I mean, it's a sad it's a sad narrative that has been ongoing. Um, you know, if I was to report a crime against a
Hmm.
white male uh, in Wyoming, right, and a white male was to report a crime against me, and it
Right.
could be the same officer that
Hmm.
reported to both events on different times, right, and it's almost feels like it's 100% fact that I'm going to get treated worse in both situations.
Yeah.
Even me reporting the crime, he would speak to me differently than than the person who's the criminal, because of what I look like and what the perpetrator looks like.
Right.
And that is because these systems are created. I mean, even in trainings, right? I remember there was this study that came out, and was in most precincts throughout the whole country.
Hmm.
When they were doing their gun shooting ranges and all that, the image of the villain looked like us.
Yeah.
The people they were shooting only looked like us. The
Hmm.
people they were supposed to avoid shooting look like them.
Right.
It's it's embedded, right? Like, they only show us with the hat to the back with the hood and then the gun out. And the
Hmm.
color of the person is us. They
Right.
never show the white guy with the hood and the gun, and those weren't in their trainings.
Right.
So it's constantly fed, even if it's not verbalized, it's visualized. And
Right.
that becomes stuck within us. And then when they get amongst their blue wall of silence folks, and
Hmm.
the stories that are being told, and then when the dominant force in that group happens to be old school white males who just, you know, they hate the fact that they can't say certain things about us publicly, right?
Yeah.
People get
Hmm.
enraged that they can't use the N word, right? They get enraged,
Yeah.
like, oh, why you can't say that? Like, why do you want to say that? But that's another story. So
Hmm.
what happens is the power that they have, the force that they impose, all the newcomers, right? Because people were like, oh, we need to become cops so we can change the system from within. That doesn't work. You know why it
Right.
doesn't work? Because when we come in, we're influenced by the old school white redneck who didn't
Right.
like us from the beginning. So he's letting us know, listen, rookie, this is how it is.
Hmm.
And if you violate the code, you're going to suffer.
Right.
Nobody violates the code because of that. So where's the change going to come when everyone in there does the blue wall of silence? Because there
Right.
was more than 5 cops.
Yeah.
The white cop shot his taser.
Yeah.
He's not arrested. He didn't talk.
Yeah.
He didn't snitch on the 5 guys because the blue wall of silence. They went along with the video camera. So
Hmm.
if there was no video camera, there would be no arrest
Right.
because the blue wall of silence doesn't allow that, right? They will never do that. And it's sad because systematically change is impossible. Now we have the answers. We know what should be done, but
Right.
it's not possible that it could ever happen.
No. Yeah. To piggyback off a lot of what you said, and very strong points again, we do know what the problem is. As far as resolutions or finding, things to execute these kind of solutions, they don't want to. I don't think it ever occurs to a lot of people. Like when someone is used to doing something for so long, you expecting them to change? Why? It's work for them. Me, you, whoever coming onto a force, a police unit or whatever the case may be, we stick out like sore thumbs. Why? Because we are being, you know, integrated into whatever it is that they're doing. And like you said, they have their rules that they stand by. They have their guidelines that they, abide by. So me trying to invoke change, you trying to invoke change, no, to them that's we're coloring outside the box. And that's the last thing that they want. They've a lot of in a lot of these instances, you have some of these police units that have been in place for 10 to 15 years, and what these units are, no one ever knows, but they're like specialty. I know for us here in New York, I know we had, like we talked about earlier, the gang units, the strike teams, and all that kind of stuff. And we all knew that because they dressed like us, and the only identifier was when they pull out, usually they had a Yankee hat on, and you could tell by how they were walking they had a vest on, so we knew who was who. But as it pertains to like lines being blurred, yeah, it is blurred. We're governed by different rules. You hit it right on the head. As far as whether you are committing a crime or reporting a crime or whatever, your darker shade makes you much more of, someone where they have to pump the brakes and hesitate. But why is that? Like, what are you so scared about? I'm just like you. I'm darker than you. I have more melanin, but I bleed like you. I put my pants on like you. I go and live my life just like you do. We might have different backgrounds, but we live in the same area. We have to coexist somehow or another. I tell people all the time because also working in corporate America, working with we work with everybody, Asian, white people, Indian people, everybody. But I think the hurdles as a black man to be in corporate America is astronomical. You have to work twice as hard. You have to be very, very clean as far as your behavior, your conduct, just how your overall performance, execution. Like you are judged substantially different from your counterparts. It's hard because you can work, and me and you have worked in a bunch of places where we see what it is. They have idiots at times that are CEOs. There are CFOs and CEOs. Basically, the whole board of directors are just full of morons because they don't know the day to day operations. Number one, they don't know the physical, emotional toll that it takes for a person that's doing those day to day activities or executions and operations, what they have to go through. They just know, get it done. And that seems to be the moniker that a lot of executives, not only in, corporate America, but just in a lot of places, the total landscape in itself. But if you don't ingratiate yourself with your everyday workers, it's hard because then there's a level of resentment there. But then you have the depiction that these people work for you, but not only in that sense, but they're simply beneath you. And when you have that kind of attitude, there's dissension. So with that dissension, you're always going to walk around and just when someone wants to say, good morning or whatever, you just act smug or whatever and just walk with your nose in the air and walk past. That's not the case. But we see it. We see it time in and time out. And these are like the simplest things that you can do and conduct yourself on an everyday basis that will never change because people have social statuses and they think they're better than the next person. But as it pertains to Tyre Nichols, his situation, it's hard because he was a father. I believe he's survived by his child. I'm not sure if it's his son or daughter. And it's definitely a heartbreaking situation in the sense that this young man lost his life senselessly. These officers knew what they were doing. They pepper sprayed him. They pummeled him. We've if you haven't seen the video, you can go watch it. I don't advise you to watch it because I hate when things like that get sensationalized because now it's to the point where people are just doing it for clicks and likes. That's not what it should be about. Obviously, they took it a step further, and I think the person in the hospital should lose their job. That picture of him with all those wires tagged onto him, that never needed to come out. That's not it. I think people at this point now are being very disrespectful with it. And I believe the mom initially had said that she did not want to see the video and she was hoping for it not to be let out. So all these people, where is the accountability? Because the police chief went on, I believe, a couple of days ago, if not yesterday or day before yesterday, she was talking about what are the parameters and means they're going to do as far as internal investigation and stuff. Since then, all 5 officers involved in the whole assault have been bonded out. How that took place, no idea. $350,000 bond on each person. You talk about 5 people. Some would raise their eyes because they don't make $350,000 money. So I'm trying to understand and wrap my head to understand how they got bonded out so quickly. But, conventional wisdom tells you, and like Jason illustrated to you, the code of silence. So I'm sure they were helped out. But it is an unfortunate thing. And yes, we are governed by two, we're governed differently from anybody else. And it's hard because, like I said earlier, there's no guarantees. You go out and, there's no guarantee you're coming back home. You're taking a chance, and it should not be that way. It should not. And it's unfortunate because, yeah, the officers were black, but it's no excuse. They have that's a habit for them. That is a habit, and I guarantee that's not the first time that's ever happened. And I think if people think it's the first time, then you have to wake up. Um, this is something where I think I want the younger generation, and especially our generation, I think everybody in totality to understand. This question that I just uploaded here is definitely it's deeply rooted. You touched on it as far as like the TV shows and just how we are depicted in public. Period. How much of accountability goes to the culture? Because I think there's a fair amount. I'm not going to say it's all of it, but there is a strong. I like. We've both watched wrestling. This question has me in the full Nelson. There has to be some accountability. I don't know what the measure or variations of it are, but the culture, yes, bears some responsibility. Jason, take it away.
Yeah, I agree. In every culture there are subcultures,
Right,
right? So in our culture, the subcultures are, the things that go on within the communities, right?
right,
Um, I think that we have to change the rules of the streets, and that's the
yep,
only way to hold people accountable. Um, you know, we can't be mad at the blue wall of silence and then try to honor someone who also keeps silence about those that harm communities. Right? We can't do that. And I think that
hmm
we have to make some changes on what we deem to be acceptable within communities and sub communities.
right,
So if someone is causing harm to the community, um, and someone bears witness and says, you know what, this needs to stop, I'm reporting it, the wrongdoer is not the person that reported it. And I think we need to change that within our culture. And that's the biggest step towards accountability, is
right,
not harming the person who is trying to stop the person imposing harm in the community.
right,
So if I know you're imposing harm, I know that you're stealing in the community, and you don't have to. I know that you're bringing drugs in the community, robbing in the community, not for rent, but for Yeezys and for
yeah,
Benzes,
yeah,
right? I think that we can't be afraid to say, yo, this shit ain't cool, man. Like, we don't
yeah,
want that here. And we can't be afraid of it. I'll tell you a quick story. So one
hmm
time I had moved to the Bronx a long time ago.
hmm
And the first day I was moving into the house in the Bronx, it was one of those houses that the front step, they got the front steps and all that.
hmm
Apparently, the house I was moving in, and this is why I tell people now, when you go to buy a house, check it in the daytime, check it in the
hmm
afternoon, and then come back and check it at night.
and at night, correct.
Yeah, no one put me on. This was 2001. Nobody
hmm
ever told me those rules. So I checked it in the daytime, and it was dope. The community
hmm
looked nice. Yeah, it wasn't really that way. And I went back at night when I was moving in after work,
hmm
and it was a whole bunch of dudes that was in a gang just on my steps of the house I'm
Chilling,
living in,
right,
chilling, smoking. And I was like, whoa, no regard for me whatsoever. And I was
yeah,
like, wait a minute. So at this time, I was a different person. So,
hmm
you know, one of at the time, one of the responses was going to be a negative one. But what I
Yeah.
did first was because I saw that they were a little younger than me, so I spoke and I was like, listen, y'all can smoke, man, but you can't
Hmm.
smoke here, right?
Right.
I let them know you can't smoke here because
As you should.
you
Yeah.
know, yeah, and at that time, my oldest son's mom was just about to give birth. And I
Okay.
was like, I'm having a kid. We're not gonna be smoking on these steps.
Hmm.
Y'all want to chill? Y'all could you see the house next there? Take over their stairs, but y'all can't be here no more. I'm not
Hmm.
trying to cause drama, but I gotta protect my home. And if the cops ever come here, I don't know y'all. I'm not going down for y'all.
Right.
So I just want that to be clear. So to avoid a problem, yeah, I should go to another house. And I didn't know how that was gonna go. And to my surprise, one of them was like, "Yo, big man, I respect that, and don't even worry about it. Congratulations on your family." Dude gave
Hmm.
me a dap and a hug, and they never smoked on my steps again.
Good.
And I lived there for about 6 years, 7 years, and
Hmm.
that was cool. Everybody there was cool with me after that, and I was
Right.
like, like it really is not the most complex thing to demand, um, you know, a healthier area for where, and I think that if more of us did things like that, um one, not only accountability, but now it's a new era, right? So in 2001 when I did that, I didn't know nothing about technology. I didn't know nothing about
Hmm.
digital art. I didn't know nothing about, but now with so much accessibility, right? And with a lot of things that you can do for free, because back then you needed money to make money. Now you
Right.
don't need money to make money, right? I literally started a clothing line on the computer,
Right.
and you can start one with no money up front, right? So it's like you can start businesses with no money. And I think that we need to be the ones to educate. So that's what I do now, right? Like I try to always, like when people be like, "Yo, how'd you do that?" I don't gatekeep information. I believe in
Right.
giving it away.
Give it. Right.
Right?
Right.
So every time somebody asks, I tell them everything. I be like, you think those Yeezys are made here? No, those are made in China. Let me show you where. And I bring them to the site where the
Hmm.
manufacturer does that. And I'm like, you
Hmm.
could pay pennies too. Right. So I think that we can't. So it's two things. One, we got to protect those that want the community to be better. Right.
Yeah.
Instead of protecting the people that harm the community, we got to protect the people that want better for the community. And two, we can't gatekeep information from people that need it most. The people in our culture need the information to get them out or to improve
Right.
where they stay. And if we be like, nah, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a master class and sell it. Like, dude, nobody wants that. Like, stop gatekeeping free information just because you stumbled upon it. It doesn't make you the wholly right owner of it. You should always
You're
be
right.
willing to give. And that's what I do. I listen. That's why, like on Facebook, I do my posts where I be like, where the Gap does this at, and I put this is the site. Go there. Like I
Hmm.
do that because I'm never gonna gatekeep information, and I
Right.
think that those two things are key into holding our culture accountable. Right. One, you're giving an alternative,
Right.
right? Because we can't just tell people do the right thing and go through the old school way and school, college, and no. Once we learn information that we weren't privy to when we were young, we should give it away right away, right?
Yeah.
So once I started learning a little bit about the market, and I wasn't even well versed enough to like speak jargon, but I knew enough to make a couple
Hmm.
bucks. I started
You're right.
telling everybody, right?
Yeah.
Immediately, like, dude, there's other ways. They didn't put us on. Like everything that I learned immediately, I put it right out here. Yo, you could what? Let's do it. Like so, and I think that's where we make these shifts, right? We want to hold ourselves accountable. And of course, we want to pretend that everyone's gonna do the right thing all the time, but that's not a real human thing,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
It's just not a way for humanity to really operate. But in order to hold ourselves accountable, we have to protect those that want the best for our community. And we
Hmm.
have to offer information that shows there's alternatives to the overnight dollar for a pair of Jordans, right? There's an alternative, right? And we have to also preach legacy. I don't think we
Yeah.
do that enough. Like you have the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, and those are
Hmm.
legacy. We
Big
don't
time.
have a legacy. We don't have
That's
our legacies. I mean, we can go back to like Musa Mansa, and where
mhm,
we own half the gold in the world. But those are hundreds and thousands of years ago. We don't
right.
have active legacies right now. And I
Mhm,
think that's what we need to start talking about. Like I do that with my kids now. Like that's why my 8-year-old and 4-year-old, they started their own clothing line. They didn't
all
even
right,
want to
good.
be
That's
a
dope.
part of mine. They're like,
Mhm,
nah, I want mine too. And I'm like, that's what I want legacy. Like that's what we do. So
mhm,
I try to tell people that, like, yo, it's good, it's good to treat your 8-year-old like an 8-year-old. But when
right.
they start being inquisitive, don't close that door. Don't keep them only 8, because the
Yeah.
world is there. Like once my son was like, "Yeah, I want to do that. I want to da, 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 da," I was like, "You know what? I'm supporting it. Let's go do it." And I'm showing him like, and I tell him like, so. Of course, he can't use a heat press machine because that's just like
Yeah.
300 degrees.
Yeah.
And I'll do it for him. But when I'm sitting on the computer, I'm like, yo, and he's telling me, oh yeah, I want that there, and I want that there, and put that character there. Like those are his designs.
Right.
Of course, 8 and 4, they can't really operate Photoshop the way I could. So I do it for them, but I do it under their guide because I
Mhm,
want them, I want them to really feel like, oh shit, like we really could do something. Like when they go to school and they wearing their own shirts, like they whole class be like, yo, can I get one? Can I get? And it's dope for them because they already be talking big money bucks in the future. Like they're already talking legacy, they talking entrepreneurship. Like I shit you not, my wife will even tell you, right? Yesterday we went to the supermarket and these
mhm,
2 little kids, and I don't like really talking to kids without their parents, but these
right.
2 kids were young, and this one kid was like, "Oh, that hoodie is nice," and I was like, "Oh, thanks." And he was like, "Where'd you get that from?" I was like, "I made it." He was like, "Oh," he's like, "Yo, that's what I want to do." And I knew I couldn't gatekeep information, even though he's a kid. And I was like, yo, you can do it right now from home. And I started telling him,
Yeah. Yeah.
tell your mom for this, and let your mom know if she can iron this for you, like, just anything.
Yeah.
And he was like, he's trying to learn, he was about 9 or 10, and he was
Mhm,
like that he wants to learn entrepreneurship and all. And I was like, yo, this is dope. Like, and I love doing that. And I think that's where, if we want to hold people accountable, I think that is important. But equally important is to show an alternative to, any type of action that just isn't beneficial to the culture, right? So
yeah.
like everything, the subcultures within the culture that isn't really helping us and isn't really moving us forward, we got to
Mhm,
step to that and offer the alternatives. And my biggest, and it's not really a regret that it's in my hands, but I just always wish we knew these things, because we could have reached more people
yeah.
eons ago. But people were gatekeeping. I didn't have no old heads
Yeah.
ever make me feel like I could have did something.
Right.
Right. When I
Yeah.
was young, I had none. I mean, of course, my relatives, but
Yeah.
I was so, I started to become in the street to a point where I started to believe, oh, they're only saying that because they love me, because my family. Instead of
Mhm,
believing them, I just, yeah, yeah, that's just my uncle. It's all right.
yeah.
But they really did believe in me, and I didn't really know that because I just attributed it to family. And I think that I just wanted more people to believe, and I never got that. And so I
Right.
learned to believe in myself. And that's why now, like, I try to just pump it out, right? I'll
Yeah.
put stuff out because no one should ever feel that way. They should know that we all have that same ability. We all, once we get a hold of the information, we should never just like, it's only mine. And I'm
Right.
and I'm gonna sell it for 19.99 in some stupid
Yeah.
master class on Facebook. Now we should
Yeah.
just give it out.
Yeah.
Like if you already got the key, make a copy of the key and give it to somebody. And that's
Uh,
all that I
a
think that's what we
thousand.
need to do. That's what
Yeah.
we need to do, man.
I think, and to piggyback off a lot of what you said, it's definitely, the guidance. And I love everything that you do with your kids and everything that you illustrate. And obviously, I do my best to, whenever you post something, I'll put it in my story or I'll just like pump it out there because, it plays a part. I think, especially when it pertains to our culture, we harness positivity, but We we put out there the negativity. We love the negative. We love the fuck shit. We love all the nonsense. We love talking about the gossip. We love talking about who got caught up doing this or who got caught up doing that, but never positivity. Never. Because I feel like in our culture, I'm not going to say it's frowned upon, but it doesn't gain enough traction. I think the worse, the bad is what people are eye openers, whether they click for it, whether they like it, or whatever the case may be. That's what's acknowledged. And that's the problem with us. I know it's a problem for me, and I'm sure you having kids, that's definitely a problem because they're the ones behind you. And these are things that you can't necessarily protect them in the future. Like, face it, our parents, they lived through a heck of an era, whether it was the 60s and 70s or whatever. But what what we knew growing up, they probably don't know. They said they knew, but each year, each lifetime, each generation, we advance, we evolve. Like, look at it. At that point in time, I'm not trying to be funny. Like, if you wanted to look at porn, you had to look at the Spice Channel. But now, you put your phone up, click whatever site, voila. And to meet people, look how we're even meeting people. You meet people through your phone. You
Yep.
talk to people, you socialize all on your phone. There's tons of apps where you reach out to people. So where we grew up in an era where we were playing tag, manhunt, football outside on the concrete, these kids have no clue. Their level of interaction, I'll be honest, it sucks because they rather sit behind a computer screen or behind their phone and, operate and execute with that. And whatever's depicted, and you hit it right on the head as far as the gang mentality, or as far as the bad guy mentality, or whatever the case may be. And even now it's twofold because women have it too. You have this love and hip hop, you have all these housewife franchises, you have everything. That's not exactly the greatest example for young females to follow either. Like, granted, I can't, we can't speak on it, but we see it because it translates in the everyday walk of life. You see the young guys that walk out here, they have their pants halfway down their ass and they think it's cool. Why? That's not a great representation of anything. You have pants, you have a belt. There's a reason why you have belt hooks. Use it. No one told you to walk outside to see your underwear or your long or whatever. It's just not needed for. That's not an attractive trait. And then also for females, like, and I want to be very, very clear. When we see females, it's different from our day. And we're not old, and that's saying a lot. But the level of influence that either social media or what is presented on TV screens or whatever the case may be, and how it's depicted, it's terrible because you're now beginning to see a lot of these females getting into altercations as if they were men. And they're it begs to ask the question, you know what did she do, what did he do, what button did she press, this, that, la, it's hard because we came from an era where if you see a man and a woman arguing, mind your business. Now it's everybody has, again, this device, and their first thing is to record. I hate it. I hate that. I've talked to a variety of people. I'm like, listen, if this is what is going to be the thing where we're going to go out to an event or we're going to go somewhere and your only aspiration is to take pictures and to take video, I don't want to go because that just takes away from the experience. And no, I don't have to. I'm not, one of those poo-poo people where I'm not going to take pictures. Yes, I take pictures, but the experience is what matters, not you capturing it every second. That diminishes everything. But as it pertains to our culture and when it comes to accountability, it sucks, Jay, simply because we had discipline. These days, And I'm sure you teach your kids very differently, much differently. I teach my niece and nephew very differently. When you see grown folks talking or you see authoritative figures talking, shut up. There's not everything that you need
Word.
to answer or say everything. No one wants to hear you. Just be quiet. You need to embrace the information that the person is saying, whether it's good or bad. Listen. That's a tool that a lot of people, even people our age, are missing. Like, if you're not willing to listen, I don't want to talk to you. I don't, because it's easy for me to tune you out. Like, I'll listen. Trust me. I've told plenty of people have told me I am a great listener. It's not that I'm just sitting there, I have nothing to say, but I'm registering the information. And a lot of people, I don't care what age group you are, they don't do that. And and how it pertains to Tyre Nichols situation, yes, he's not from there. You could tell he's never been in trouble ever in his life,
Right.
but he should have kept silent. I don't know what led up to it, because when the video starts out, they already started pummeling him and cursing him and doing all that. But I think a lot of the times when you get in altercations, I've been in fights, you've been in fights, we both know each other's background. When someone is saying something, it is only, and at that point in time, it's only going to anger you. I don't care if you've never been in a fight, this does not apply to you. But if you have, everybody will understand. When someone is talking and you're in that heat of combat, or if you're in a tussle, the slightest thing will set you off. So everyone, please, you have to be very, very careful about how you are. But I'm always going to say, this generation here, discipline is lacking. There's a lack of resiliency. They don't know how to do anything. They do not. You talk to some of these guys outside in the world, like, there's a group of guys that I play basketball with sometimes. They're younger than me, and they're like, "Oh, OG." I'm like, "Listen, when you're doing something, learn the value of it. Don't just be doing it just to do it, because I'm not running up and down the court for my health. You might, because you have the energy for it. I don't. So when you're doing something, execute it in a way where it's effective. Simple. But if you're just doing it and dribbling the air out of the ball, I mean, how many points do you get for dribbling the ball? Nothing. You don't. You have to think. But like I said earlier, this discipline is very lacking in this generation. And I'm not trying to like poop on them, but it's bad. You know, I'm sure when you go outside, you see all these people talking tough, man or female. Now it's no discrimination. They're all talking a certain way, conducting themselves a certain way. And, you know, is it, hip hop to blame for it? I don't know. I can't really say it's hip hop's fault, because we all know it's an act. Like, Jay-Z doesn't live in Marcy Projects. Fat Joe doesn't live on Trinity Ave no more. A lot of these people don't live where they used to grow up. They're showing you a folk tale. They're showing you a presentation, a movie. Why is it that you cannot understand it? If you see Jay-Z talking about he was the biggest drug dealer, guess what? That was years ago. Jay-Z's a billionaire. He's a made man. He's doing whatever he wants to do. He's grown out his hair. He doesn't have waves in his hair anymore. He's grown his hair out. He's on a different level. He lives in California somewhere. He's not even on this coast. But I think people need to understand, like, just like you're able to differentiate, like, a George Clooney movie. Everyone loves George Clooney. But in Ocean's 11, he was a bad guy, right? Everybody likes Brad Pitt. He was a bad guy. But in real life, is he a bad guy? No. He's just a regular person. But why is it so hard in our culture to understand or being able to separate the two? Because we've watched all these movies. We watched The Godfather, we watched Casino, we've watched Scarface, we watched all these shows and movies that illustrate and highlight the bad guy. You want to be the bad guy. They glorify the bad guy. But guess what? In the end, what happens to the bad guy? He either goes to jail or he gets put in the ground.
Yep.
And they have to understand that. But for this young culture, they're very undisciplined, they're very defiant, but they have they lack resiliency, and it's terrible. But you can't fix everything. Um, and it's heartbreaking because we're getting to the point where it's you know a lot more bad being done than good. Jay, you want to hit us with closing arguments?
Yeah. You know, I really wish that in times and situations, because unfortunately there's going to be more situations like Tyre Nichols. I wish that we took time to be to elevate our humanity, right? Instead of looking for an immediate downplaying angle to separate and politicize, but instead elevate our humanity and say, speak factually, right? And not, what these officers did was completely wrong. No one should be seeking for an excuse. And I
Right.
think that in the political spectrum, too often, it's whoever screams the loudest, they feel like they're winning the argument. And what everyone forgets is that there's a family grieving, there's a community confused, and there's an entire people who feel unsafe
Right.
every time another Tyre Nichols happens.
Yep.
Um, it's weird. Like there's this meme that goes around that says you ever go to the supermarket and then you decide you don't want to buy nothing and you walk out and you're like, oh my God, walk right. So they don't think you stole something.
Right.
Right. And it's true because I've been there. But equally true is when I walk by police officers, um, sometimes I don't know if I'm walking like a suspect or if I'm just walking.
Right.
And it bothers me that I have to think that, knowing I don't commit crime,
Mhm.
knowing I'm a parent, knowing that I'm doing all the right things, um, but because of how I look or how someone else may perceive how I look because of what they absorbed.
Mhm.
And, I walk by, I'll look at the car, and if I see them looking at me, I don't know now if I'm going to be stopped.
Right.
And no one should feel that way. A lot of people that's not from the communities I come from, they'd be like, "Oh, if you didn't do nothing, then you shouldn't have to worry." And that's not what really happens.
Right.
Um, y- Clearly, it's shown in investigations Tyre Nichols didn't do nothing wrong,
Yeah.
and he had reason to worry.
Yeah.
Right? They were out for him for some reason. So I just think that we need to elevate our humanity every time these situations happen. And we need to come up with a real solution that actually that both parties would say, you know what, this would actually work. Because both parties want an extreme, and because they never agree, we get nothing.
Right.
We're the ones that suffer because everything is so politicized. So I think that we need to just decrease the politics and elevate the humanity.
Yeah. No, definitely strong statement there. And to piggyback off that is it's hard because the times that we're living in like one of the biggest unpredictable times there are. Um, you know, uh, I know it probably just it's getting harder and harder. I don't know how you feel about it, but us being black men and going outside, and I can't reiterate it much, and you touched on it. You don't feel safe. You don't. You feel that you know you are the description of some kind of suspect. Like you're already deemed that you're doing something or did something or someone has it out for you. And it doesn't help that our own kind are, grimy because if they see you walking, they feel as if you're a target and they can take some kind of advantage, whatever that advantage may be. And it's just unfortunate. And it's hard because, we have mothers and fathers, we have loved ones and things like that. And it worries them. And, when people when you leave someone's, whether you're leaving someone's house or you're leaving a function, and everyone's like, now it's no longer, oh, okay, I'll check you out, blah blah blah. Now it's like, text me when you get home, because it's hard, or call me when you get home, or let me know, blah blah blah, how such and such. And we're now conditioned, because now it gives that person, whether it's your wife, girlfriend, you know mother, father, loved ones, or whoever, they just want that piece of calm. We're walking into big unknowns, because you and I, we don't really like watching the news. Like, if something dramatic happens, obviously we'll watch it because it's going to take over the news. But as it pertains to things like violence, and it just seems like it gets closer and closer, whether you are from the Bronx, whether you are from Brooklyn, whether you're from Waco, Texas, whether you're from anywhere. Violence in itself comes closer and closer, much closer than you think. And I think a lot of times people choose to be, standoffish, because it doesn't directly affect them, until it reaches their territory, their neighborhood. Then it causes panic. What these officers did to Tyre Nichols was despicable. It was disgusting. It should have never gotten to that point. I think, if anything, it gives everyone an awareness, should give everyone an awareness to understand that, yes, they are law enforcement, but it doesn't afford you freedoms that you may think. Because if the alley is dark, it doesn't matter. Clearly, these guys didn't care whether they had the body cam on, which they all did. They do not care. So remember early on in the episode when me and Jay were talking about a black man's worth? My personal opinion is we're very, very low on the totem pole. And I'm not trying to be funny. Like, I value my life. Jason values his life. A lot of people we know within our respective circles value their life. But it's not always the case, because there are people out here that really don't care for your life. And that's the problem. Whether you have the level of accountability to do right from wrong, which I think at this juncture in life, everybody would understand right from wrong, we choose not to. We choose not to. And we're all at fault, whether it's the movies we watch, the music we listen to, or, the truths and fibs and lies and folk tales that we choose to believe. We all play a part in it. But we have to get better. We have to, especially us, the people who have fathers, and, people in our families that are young ones and are the next generation. They're looking to you to be the blueprint. And if you're not providing the proper guidance, what are you even doing? So I say this to say this: RIP to Tyre Nichols. Very unfortunate. He couldn't even make 30. And, it's unfortunate, because people who look like us, our life expectancy it's not very high, and it's sad, because when you see these kind of things, what George Floyd, Jay, you mentioned Rodney King, and I remember Abu Luima and all these other characters and things like there's an extensive history with these things. They all look like us. They all look like us, and it always ends in a demise. There's no amount of money that could be paid out, because it's not bringing that boy back. And I just want people to understand, just value life, because as we step and wake up each day, nothing is promised. So, once again, RIP Tyre Nichols, condolences to his family, and hopefully he finds justice, because those men that did that to him, they need to be prosecuted and they need to be put in prison, period. And that's all I really have to say about that. All right, guys. This is episode 7 for us. And, like always, we are humbly appreciate if you subscribe to the channel, like, share, comment. We're always up for criticism. Leave your comments in the comment section. Let us know how you feel about it. Obviously, it's been circulating for a whole week and hand over fist. And I know everyone, especially people we know collectively, have tons of opinions and point of views and touch points. So leave it in the comments and let us know. Help us out. We will be starting to do interviews next coming up. So if we reach out to you, be ready because it's easy to hide behind a screen. But when you're on screen, something very different. But anyway, that's Jason. I'm Clem Boogie. And together we make up straight to it. So we'll check you out later.